Because you will go over?
What was that?
Because you will go over.
Otherwise, I will go over,
Yeah.
and I don't want to. I think the purpose today, I just want to be really clear. So we got over 100 people on right now, and the purpose of today is going to be to stay super focused and give you guys a good amount of background on sort of how we've built Ferncrest, but then also dive into specifics about sort of actionable strategies that you guys can take as well in whatever part of your journey you're in. So really want to make sure that this is giving you context from us, but also giving you something that you can take away into your own future as well. There's a few other things. There's a chat box that you guys can use. So chat with us, chat with each other, as well as a Q&A box. The Q&A box is a good spot to actually put those questions as they come up, because we will have a Q&A section at the end, and we'll make sure that we try to get through as many of those as possible. And then the chat box, though, can be a little bit more interactive throughout the process as well. All right. So without further ado, let's actually, Joanna, can you potentially, where's that screen here? It's beautiful. There it is.
Okay. All right, guys. No worries.
Joanna's much more versed in getting these share screens up and running. There it is.
There we go. Okay.
All right. So everybody should see the presentation now. And without further ado, let's dive into what today's all about. It's all about explaining where we were a few years ago and how we got to where we are today. So this was a couple years ago, the chaos of building a campground. And what I want to start with is saying that although it is hard work and there is a lot of hands-on things like this that you see on social media and that you see on YouTube and you see in your own research, we're also going to talk about how you can take, or you can go from here, which is like crazy hands-on work, to where we are here today, which is sitting at home. Our campground is running. We have a great technology. We have a great team. Everything is running so that it is rather, I don't want to say passive, but it is a investment into your future that you're making when you're actually building something like this. You're not always going to be the one doing the laundry, doing the things if you don't want to. Today's goal is to share our journey. Like I said, it's to provide those actionable strategies, and then hopefully it's to inspire action. That's why we do what we do. We want to see people take action. We want to hear from you. We want to see what you're working on, and we would love to be a part of it if there's anything that we can do to help.
So who are we? We are Brian and Joanna, and Rex, Ray, and Rad too. This is us on our campsite in the Poconos, Pennsylvania. We had gone up to move to the Poconos a couple of years ago, where we had found, honestly, just this old motel that needed a little bit of love. It was a COVID project. We took it on and we opened it, and it was great. We utilized kind of the same technologies that we still do today. Prior to that, or I guess we can go into this, sorry. Prior to that, Brian and I had started an apparel and accessories business. So to give a little bit more context, and that was back in 2006, which was, we're a little dated, I'm not going to lie.
It's starting to feel like that.
And so, like I said, during COVID in 2020, we kind of just shifted gears. We took on a COVID project that at the time sounded like a good idea. And it was a little bit more than maybe we had originally thought, but it was so much fun. And then we just fell in love with the Poconos area for where the hotel is. And down the road, there was a campground.
Yep. And that's where we are today, which is building a glamping business based upon all of this history. So even though clothing doesn't seem related to what we're doing today, it's all a part of the journey of learning how to build brand, learning how to build business. And surprisingly, I think a lot of the success that we've had in the hospitality space has to do with what we learned over the last 15 years of building brands. And I think one of the things that you're going to take away from this presentation as well, in the marketing section in particular, is how there's not a huge secret to this path and to this success. there's a lot of strategies that anybody can follow and replicate on their own.
But I think it's really, really important to know that it is going to take some work. You know, this is not going to be kind of like a get rich quick scheme, so to speak. Like there is going to be some work that needs to be done. So this is an example on what I first saw when I walked onto this campground.
It was great. It was beautiful.
I don't know what Brian saw, but these are the photos for what I saw when I first walked on.
I don't remember that pile of trash.
You don't?
Yeah.
No, there was a couple of those actually. And it just needed, there was so much potential. There's so many good bones. And if you guys are in that journey as well, and maybe you already have land, maybe you're looking at and eyeing a piece of land, you guys might see the same thing that Brian did at first, and eventually I did, but it took a little bit more time. And it might look something similar to this or not. But what you do if you are able to do things well, efficiently, and effectively, what this then starts to turn into is this. And this is what our campground looks like today. We have two different types of tents, our dome tents and then our crest tents, which are a little bit more of the traditional safari type tents. And like I said, it took a little bit of work, but once you put in that work, now you're able to really leverage technology, all the remote benefits of that to be able to do the things that matter.
All right, so that's where we are today. We've built a beautiful campground, Glampground. Those words we use sort of interchangeable in many ways, because glamping is just a form of camping, right? So don't get mixed up by that. But basically, glamping is growing internationally. It's huge, and it's not slowing down. So what we want to know is, I think a lot of you guys are probably from the States. We'd love to know what state you're coming in from. It'll just be great to see. Everybody will enjoy seeing the chat box and being able to see where people are from. And technology makes everything so interconnected these days. Not only are we on this call on Zoom, but also the technology that you're going to be able to utilize in the glamping industry is going to allow you to operate your business, whether or not you live on site or you live hours and hours away like we do. Believe it or not, we don't live at our property. That's the power of technology, and that's why it's really great to see where everybody's from. All right, so now keeping you guys working right now, I want to also know where you are in that Glampground journey. So this is a question that I ask a lot. I've asked this in my previous webinars as well. And maybe you attended one previously and you said 1, and maybe you're at 2 now, or maybe you were at 5 and now you're maybe a little bit uncertain and you're at 3. But where are you in that Glampground journey? Like 5, you have the money or you've already started, and 1, you're really just trying to learn, and that's why you're here today.
Maybe you're like Brian in this video where you're signing on the dotted line for the
I was always sort of 5. I run at a 5.
Yeah, you started at 5.
Yeah, but and Joanna starts at 1s, and I think that's what's also really interesting about sort of our journey and where we are, and also maybe where you are. If you are working with a spouse or you're working with a partner, understanding where each person is at, and then being able to work together in a great partnership. Awesome. There's a lot. Wow, there's some 6s in there.
Whoa.
Some people are.
I'm not even at a 6. That's awesome.
That's really cool. All right. So very quickly, I'm not going to talk too much about the industry as a whole, because we're all here because we know how great the glamping industry is. That's why you're probably here, but it's huge and it's growing. It's a $12 billion industry. Every time I look for the data of this, because I just literally searched the data for the last couple of years, and it's just kept on going up. And the projections of it continue to expand. And that $12 billion market, by the way, is the US and Canada combined, not even including international markets where it's already quite large in Europe and Australia and places like that. But really, it's a substantial growth, and it's becoming an important part of the travel segment. One of the things I like to talk about when people ask, am I concerned that it's getting so big and so inflated that there's not going to be opportunities for me if I come in a year or so with a Glampground? And the reality is that the inventory of actual glamp sites is far under the demand and the projected demand. So there is ample opportunity over the next handful of years for those glamp sites to fill the demand without having to worry about saturation. And then all you have to really think about is, well, the ones that are going to do it the best are going to be successful, because at the end of the day, really, glamping is camping. I've said that. And the fact is that camping is not going anywhere. And therefore glamping is just an evolution of what we're experiencing in camping overall. There's also a lot of newcomers, which, indicate that this is very entrepreneurial and you'll fit right in. And 93% of glamping operators are self-funded. And that doesn't mean that they're coming into the business with, deep resources or all the money, but they're self-funding it through maybe bank loans or investors. They're not large private equity institutions that are coming in to open these establishments. Here's also the sort of like recap of where the general financial picture of the glamping industry is. We're going to just review this and then we're going to dive into a lot of actionable strategies around the financing side of things. But you can start a glamping business for as little as $10,000. It's going to be a small business. That's going to be maybe, 1 or 2 glam sites. I'd say that, you can go super cheap, but there is a fine line between glamping and then just like traditional rustic camping.
I think that initial, that first tier is probably like a little notch above your Airbnb, where you're going to have like some really strong branding roots, but maybe you only have 1, 2, maybe 3 sites.
Yeah.
And so really gets your feet wet to be able to then grow and scale.
Exactly. I like to say that, a Glampground becomes a Glampground when you have more than, 5 to 6 sites. Then it's an actual like hospitality business Glampground. It's not just one tent in your backyard or a couple tents in your backyard, which is completely fine. But like you said, that's more of like a short-term rental business. That's more like an Airbnb. If you're creating what we've done, a Glampground, you have to have sort of a critical mass for it to feel like an actual destination, like a hospitality destination. And that's going to be right around that sort of like $100,000 investment mark where, you're going to be getting upwards of 10 sites and you're going to be able to see somewhat of a brand develop around that Glampground. And then the average, which is where we landed with our initial investment into Ferncrest, which was around $350,000. Don't turn off the webinar yet because I know that's a lot of money. And the reality is that you don't need all of that capital to get started, not anywhere close, because we did not have that money in the bank whatsoever.
Not at once. No, certainly not.
Not at once. And then obviously there's plenty of Glampgrounds out there that are spending millions of dollars to develop, but we're not really going to cover that as a topic today because that's not that relevant to many people. And it's not something that we believe that you have to spend to open a Glampground.
Guys, really quickly, a housekeeping note. I'm seeing some questions come into the webinar chat, which unfortunately will get buried, and we won't be able to see that. So if you have a question that we want to answer in the Q&A section, please use the Q&A tab, and that way we can definitely get to it. Otherwise, in the webinar chat, we won't be able to see it.
Also, the Q&A tab will be a great place. If you keep it clean with questions at the end, we can make sure we go through them. So stay around and then we'll go through them at the end. That being said, somebody did ask, I saw in the chat, does it include the purchase of land? And these numbers here do not take into consideration the purchase of land. So this would be separate. If you were to add land into it, the average cost of opening a Glampground is around $650,000. So $350,000 for like building a Glampground would mean you spend about $300,000 on land. That being said, land is financeable beyond most other things. So again, this is not about how much cash you need. This is generally speaking, how much you should think about an investment into a Glampground. Which, before I move on, I'll just say one last thing. It's about the same as what you would be building or buying a single family home in America, right? The cost of housing and the cost of a home is so much now that it really puts these numbers into sort of relation to what that investment would be. So if you go out and buy one home to Airbnb, it might be about the same as if you were to build a small Glampground.
So unfortunately, contrary to many beliefs, if you build it, they will not come. This is, obviously a play on the movie
Field of Dreams.
Thank you. And so one of the things about just building a beautiful Glampground that has a ton of amenities, looks beautiful, Instagrammable, that doesn't mean anything. There's a lot of other work that needs to be done in addition to that. And so
that's why before we get into the meat of the content, just want to say really quickly, and I'm going to go over this really quickly. Glam Launch Accelerator is something that we're using to go a lot deeper on all of this. So I'll share more, and I'll send out an email at the end of this for anybody that registered that gives a little bit more info. But we're launching this tomorrow, and that's part of why we wanted to host this webinar, is that this on-demand course program is based upon our years of experience now in the hospitality business, all boiled into a program that's on demand. And it basically is the best of the best when it comes to the content that we've put out over the last couple of years through our weekly newsletter, through our social media, through our YouTube, boiled down into actionable plans that you can take to build your own glamping business. So really encourage you guys taking a look at this later after the webinar if you have a chance. There's going to be a web page we'll send out to you as well.
So let's go into what today's webinar will really dive into. Now, we aren't going to be able to go into as much detail on these topics as we would in the Accelerator, which is essentially why we built the Accelerator. But we really want to touch on these hot topics. It's going to be financing, zoning, marketing, operations, and then financials, because I think that's typically where a lot of people are kind of starting off and they're not really sure how to work around the money topic. So we'll start off with financing.
So there's 4 forms of financing that I like to say that you should look into. And all forms of this could be whether or not you're looking to buy the land or maybe an existing property, or if you're looking to finance the actual construction of your Glampground. All 4 of these should be considerations that you take when you look at this. All of these I have experience with both the previous businesses that we've run as well as our current business. So I want to use some real examples in telling you how you can do the same. So first and foremost, seller financing. Believe it or not, I've bought 2 major hospitality projects with seller financing. We bought the campground that we turned into Ferncrest with seller financing, where we put 0 down. And then a few months later, I bought a $2 million hotel in the city with the same methodology. We're not going to talk about that because that's a crazy different story.
It's a different webinar.
That's a whole different one. But the fact of the matter is that people that think that seller financing isn't an option, it's just not. It's not true. We've done it. We've seen a tremendous amount of success with it, and it allows you to get really great deals and preserve your capital for the actual construction of your Glampground.
I mean, here's the thing about seller financing, right? First of all, for those of you who aren't aware of it, just learn more about it, right? Because here's the thing, no one's going to offer it. Okay, no seller's going to offer it. You need to be able to come to them and be like, hey, let's get creative. You're selling, I really want to offer this. And so you need to be able to present it.
And I think actually before I go into exactly how we would structure it for a deal and how we did it with ours, let me explain that seller financing, because I realize maybe some people may not understand what that is. Seller financing is basically the actual current owner or the previous owner of the property financing it to the buyer, not using a bank. So instead of having to go to a bank, and oftentimes glampgrounds, campgrounds, commercial properties, they're difficult to finance, or maybe you don't have great credit and it's hard to get a bank loan. There's a lot of reasons why you would do this. But at the end of the day, a seller, like if I was to sell you this house, I could sell it to you, transfer the deed over to you, and you could owe me the money instead of owing a bank the money. So basically, it's very much just like using the seller as the bank. And it allows you to do things faster and more efficiently. And that's what we did with the purchase of the Wilson Campground. So Wilson Campground is what we turned into Ferncrest. We basically cold called the main line that you would be booking a campground from. So basically, hey, this is Wilson Campground. And instead of saying, I'd like to book a campsite, it's like, hey, my name's Brian. I'd like to talk about maybe buying your campground. And the reality is that
that is really what happened.
Yeah. It's a personal, and the same thing happened in the hotel in Philadelphia, because it's a personal connection. And sometimes it's a cold call, sometimes it's meeting the person in person, but at the end of the day, you have to put yourself out there. Some people are uncomfortable with that, but you're coming as a viable option for them to sell something that may not be what they want to be running. And that's really the key. Nobody's going to sell you something if it's a great property that they're making a lot of money off of. You have to identify neglected properties. So if you choose to go the path of buying, say, an old campground, which by the way is great for zoning, you gotta figure out what is out there that may not be running to its best of its abilities. And that's the key is looking at online results, driving by, looking at pictures, because online results tell a lot. Wilson Campground had 3 reviews, which means that there's just not a lot of activity, right? Ferncrest Campground's been open for 2 seasons and almost has 200 reviews. Wilson Campground had been around since the 1950s. That's just the reality of looking at online, looking at pictures. But once you make that connection, you want to structure something that is favorable to them, which is basically like, hey, I will make a monthly payment to you for the next 5 years. And that monthly payment is probably going to be better than whatever they're making out of their current situation, or maybe they're losing money. And then ultimately, you're giving them an out at the end of it by giving them a lump sum payment at the 3 to 5 year mark, which at that point, you'll be able to refinance with a traditional bank loan because you have a great business running. All right, got to move on. Next one is investors. So using investors is a great way to finance your project as long as you're able to structure it in a way that's favorable to you. Never get into a situation with an investor where you're no longer the majority owner or you're giving up too much control, because at the end of the day, you're running this project. So it's not a favor that you're asking for people, you're making them money. Just remember that when you're structuring a deal in this space, especially real estate and hospitality, it's very profitable. You can make a lot of money and you're going to make investors money as well. So structure it as debt if you can, so that you don't have to actually have equity connected to it. However, if you are going to structure it as equity, here's a great format example for how you could do it. So say you want to raise $100,000 and say you want to give somebody 30% equity for that investment, which, would imply not a huge valuation. So maybe this is a smaller project, but they're going to give you $100,000. And there's plenty of people, by the way, in small markets even, that are really interested in hospitality and glamping, but don't want to do the work. So they're really willing to invest money like that into it. Say you give them a 10% interest rate compounding. So even though it's equity, you're going to give them interest. And the reason why you're going to do that is you're going to say, but I want to buy you out in 3 years. And you can do that at sort of a predetermined valuation metric. They're going to make 30% of the profits throughout that time period because they own 30% of the equity, but then you're going to buy them out. And this is the key. And I'm going to end it on this, because you want to have the ability to own 100% of your project if you're raising money. And if you need to make it a sweeter deal by giving them equity in the short term, by giving them 30% of the profits right now, make sure that you just put that line in the sand later 3, 4, 5 years, where you're working towards an outcome where you can buy them out. I love this model because it allows you to know that you're really going to own the majority of it or all of it at the end of it all.
So we can also go a traditional route, the banks and credit cards as well, if you get a little bit creative. So banks provide these low interest loans, right? But it's really hard to get without collateral. So it's not an option for everyone, but banks are still, maybe if it works for you, then I think it's really viable. SBA is also a really great option as well, but just keep in mind, it is really time consuming. So let's just say you may already have land, or you need to open up by a certain time. If you're wasting a lot of time with a lot of documentations, SBA is known to do really, really in-depth due diligence, and that's going to potentially push out your opening date. Maybe that's not worth it because time is money. And credit cards. So, man, credit cards, they're powerful when they're used the right way. Other times those rates will get you, but I mean, credit cards were a huge part of how we finance things in the very beginning. And
credit cards go hand in hand with actually the final format, which is cash flow financing, which we'll talk about. But first, I want to give you a quick overview of third-party funding solutions that you should consider looking into when it comes to using something like SBA financing. So essentially, if you're going to use SBA financing, you can go to the SBA directly and work with them, or you can engage one of these many different services out there that will basically walk you through the entire process for a small fee. And I've seen this work very successfully for a lot of people. So if you want to jot these down, the ones that...
Because there are a lot of scammy ones out there too as well.
Yeah, so Benetrends is a great one. I'm well connected with them. If you're interested, I could even connect you with them. They basically We'll have an introductory call with you and walk through your project, figure out how you need to finance it, figure out what products are good for you on the SBA front, and then actually be your representation, getting you that approval with the SBA. It's definitely the way to go if you're going to go SBA. Same thing with finance, Business Finance Depot. I know the people over there and can make connections as well. But essentially, using these guys takes the due diligence out of your hands so that you don't have to actually stress about the process. So definitely worth looking into. Cash flow, like we said, if you're going to utilize things like credit cards where you have sort of a tighter cash flow cycle, you're going to want to make sure that you're utilizing the future cash flow in a very aggressive way to pay down those cards and be able to also mitigate your risk by taking money sooner and quicker. And what I mean by that is launching bookings for your Glampground even before you open.
That was a huge part of how we were even able to finance and get things and pay for things as we were working on them, was how we took bookings well before we were actually opened.
Yeah, that's huge, because if you think about it, if you can take bookings, say 3 months before you open, and you're taking 100% of that as a deposit, that's essentially an interest-free loan from your future customers. And all of the costs that associated with building a Glampground, can sort of be weighted towards the end. Not all of them, but a large amount of the cost of building a Glampground, because it's a shorter cycle of building, especially if you're converting something, or you're not doing a massive development project. You could probably have a lot of that cash flow from the business helping you finance the actual project itself. So combine those with credit cards and some loans, and you can finance a several $100,000 project without having much capital in the bank.
So again, to recap, cash flow is simply having the right amount of cash in the right place at the right time every time. I think that a big hesitation when we talk to some people, it's like, I don't have this X amount in the bank right now.
Yep.
I don't have the money. But if you start to think about cash flow as just simply having the right amount of cash at the right time, then your frame of work, you'll be a lot more nimbler, and you'll probably get your campsite open a lot sooner without that hesitation.
Yep. Amen. This is basically a good example of how the cash flow financing worked for us. So we started taking bookings on April 30th, and this was a screenshot from the time of that day where bookings were just coming in. Now, again, if you build it, they will not come. It wasn't magic that all of these bookings came in right off the bat. It was because of marketing, and it was because of good storytelling, and everything else that went into actually building the brand. But the reality is that we didn't have a huge social media following at the time. We really just had a concentrated effort to launch and get bookings, and all of that resulted in revenue and money in the bank the next day.
So really quickly, I'm noticing quite a few people are asking whether or not this will be recorded. It will. So if those of you who aren't able to stay through the end, we will have recording of this.
Okay, so the zoning and permitting. So zoning and permitting is obviously the second biggest concern that people have when it comes to building a Glampground. I'd say that finance and then zoning and permitting are the things that hold people up. That being said, zoning and permitting is different for every municipality, so we can't actually give you the actual exact answer for your situation. However, we can say that there are quite a few shortcuts that you can employ to make sure that you're thinking about this the right way and not getting overly paralyzed. One of them is, if you haven't purchased something yet, not only consider buying an old, say, campground, but it doesn't even have to be that. Maybe it's a commercial property. Instead of buying a residential property that's zoned residentially, simply make sure it's zoned commercially. And that's going to be a big bypass. Or maybe you can buy even an old hospitality business. Maybe it's an old restaurant. These are all things that will be a lot easier to justify building a campground on than saying residential land. The other thing is agricultural land. Buying an old farm, which there are many in America, is a great way to tap into agro or agritourism, which is basically a classification that many municipalities have to support the agricultural industry by allowing them to have things like bed and breakfasts or campgrounds on the property. So there's a lot of different things that you want to consider when you're looking into this. The other thing would be the number of sites. Some municipalities will allow up to 4 sites without it being having to be classified as anything other than just some residual accessory dwelling that you have on your property. So the way I would look into this is simply looking for your municipal's website and then calling that number and being very earnest about what you want to accomplish. People will help you. I promise you, nobody's going to bite. And it does seem intimidating and challenging. If you want to dive deeper into it, I'm definitely willing to shed more light on it in a separate sort of session. But this is something that I know a lot of people get tied up on. And all I can say right now is it's not impossible. Everything is overcomable. Is that a word?
No. So some examples of some of the things that we had experienced in going into
the deck. The deck at a certain height doesn't have to get a permit in some municipalities, right? So if you think about building decks that are 30 inches or above, you're going to have to get a permit. If you build decks lower, maybe you don't have to get a permit. There's a lot of things that go into that. Signage, surprisingly, sometimes there's permits needed for a sign.
Yeah.
That sign needed a permit for $10. That's it. It was a $10 permit. Simple as that.
Are we going to get into marketing now?
Let's get into marketing, because this is actually really, I think, one of the more important parts of this, because you can build a beautiful campground, and unless you have the ability to get people to it, it's not going to really matter. So today we're going to focus on social media. That's really where our bread and butter is. So we built a large and growing social media following over the last year and a half, but we entered our Glampground journey with 0. All right. So when you look at our Instagram feed and you're like, wow, 300,000, you look at Facebook over 200,000, you think that, oh, we might have come into this with a large following. That's not the case. The reason why we have a large following, and the reason why you can too, is because we really tapped into the emotional side of social media through storytelling. And if you think about all the things that you like on social media, they are not the final product. They are not the brand. They are the journey. It is the story. And it is the ones that are not just easy and straightforward, but the ones that overcome challenges, the ones that show character and real life examples. And I would say that what we did in the run up to opening Ferncrest was exactly that. And something that if you're willing to put the time and effort into, it can work miraculously for you and generate hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue as a result. I really can attribute our social media following now, a year and a half in, to probably upwards of $1 million in revenue through bookings because of it, because people show up at our property because of the social media side of things. We're going to talk about organic versus paid as well, because there is a combination of both, and don't think that you just have to go about this in an organic means. Storytelling is just about, it's about connecting with your audience that goes beyond the product and the service. So here's the brand loyalty funnel that we created that was really organically developed. I don't think we went into this with the strategy that we can now tell you about. I certainly didn't have a fancy word like brand loyalty funnel for it at the time. We were just looking to tell our story. And I knew deep down inside that by building a brand separate from the actual property, we would be able to actually extend that beyond the property itself. So if you're thinking about your future entrepreneurial career in a sense that maybe this Glampground is one of multiples or one of future projects, the idea being that your personal brand is far more long lasting. As long as you're alive, your personal brand's alive. Far more long lasting than any business or property that you start. So it's imperative that you take that seriously, and it's imperative that you actually use a personal brand as almost a personal reality show for what you're working on. And I know that's intimidating to tell people that, because some people just hate social media and sharing on social media. And previously I was sort of the same, but I realized that giving people an insight into your life is the best way, and specifically your life as it relates to your business, is the best way to get people excited about the business itself. So people follow us and then they follow the businesses, not the other way around.
And so I think that going back to that original question that we had first asked, if you are somewhere around like a 3, a 4, or up, you have a story to tell right now.
Right.
And so even if you're not the most avid social media person guru right now, just start recording stuff. Just start like going around and just having it so that maybe later on you're going to need that content, B-roll it. You don't even have to be talking in it, but just to be able to tell that story later. I think that's one of the biggest things whenever anybody comes to us about wanting to talk about marketing. It's like, start now. Start so much now. I know you don't have your tents up right now. I know that you don't have a logo right now, but talk about the struggle about how you can't find someone to get a logo, or everything is a story. This journey is your story.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to go massively deep in this over the course of Glam Launch Accelerator, because this is a topic that I genuinely really love. And the other thing that you're going to want to really think about is it's not just on you to create content. The best part of hospitality is that you have this amazing platform to invite other people into to create content and tell your story on your behalf. So once you're open, you're going to really want to invite influencers and other social media people to your property. And believe it or not, you don't have to pay them an arm and a leg. How much did we pay this person?
A 2-night stay.
Trick question.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was a 2-night stay. We comped a 2-night stay. Invited them up to see if they would like to spend. But that's the thing is that if your property has a specific niche, if you are gearing towards families, if you are targeting older adults, if you're targeting those who are avid campers maybe, and maybe just don't want to pinch their tent or whatnot, you find the influencer that is in your niche, and I guarantee you they will be more than happy to come. If not completely for free, then maybe you just pay for their travel expenses.
Yep.
Maybe you just pay for their food. But nowadays, you see celebrities being paid like tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of dollars for one post. That's not you. You don't want there. You don't need
you have this beautiful property that people want to be at.
Yes.
Just give them a free stay and make them post something. I know I am oversimplifying it, but it's powerful.
But it can be that simple. And so this was a couple that came. This post, their reel, generated 22,000 likes, had over 100 comments, and generated us approximately 5,000 in bookings.
Right. So you don't need traditional media anymore. You need great influencers. All right. You also need a great website. And luckily, websites don't cost an arm and a leg to build anymore as well. Building a website that is focused on getting you direct bookings is the best way for you to control your destiny and control your future. This website in particular is the cornerstone of your booking strategy, but you also want to look into third-party booking sites, which also called online travel agents or OTAs. And the reality is that fewer is better though. You really want to focus on your website and make sure that you're building your brand from there first. And the major OTAs like Expedia and Booking.com are super important for hospitality overall, and you can definitely integrate them and play with them. But the one that we've actually seen a lot of success with that we actually didn't start using until July of this year is HipCamp.
I didn't want to use HipCamp. But being very honest with you, I didn't, because I was like, we are not a good fit, like we thought we were not a good fit. We're not these backpacking, hardcore traditional camper sites. But HipCamp has done surprisingly well for us.
Yeah.
And I just think it goes to show that people are looking, like the people who usually are on Expedia or Booking.com, they're coming to HipCamp because they want more of an outdoor experience.
Yeah, it's all about the experience, and it's really about connecting with people that love the outdoors. And it seems like a no-brainer now saying it, but we held off, and we shouldn't have, because it's performed really well.
Here's another factor that I will also say from a customer service experience really quickly is that those who are coming from Expedia or another OTA like Booking, Travelocity or whatnot, that person who's coming to those sites may not be a really great fit for you. Whereas somebody who's coming for a third-party site that's specifically in the outdoor industry, like HipCamp, is a much better fit. So I will say from a customer experience standpoint, we have a lot more issues with those guests who come through us through a Booking.com or a Travelocity.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, and so true. We just had an experience with an Expedia customer yesterday. That was but we'll leave that. Whereas HipCamp, on the other hand, they know sort of what they're expecting when they come here. So check out this. This is just a screenshot that I took of our booking platform in HipCamp, and some of those reservations, $500, $400, $500, $600, $700 a reservation coming through a camping, what we thought was more of a rural rustic camping experience website, but it's not the case. So if you're interested in anything, have your website, have HipCamp connected to it, feeding those reservations back and forth through the property management software that you use. HipCamp will also like help you set everything up. They provide insurance. There's a lot of other benefits to them. Some people just use HipCamp for their campgrounds, and that is their main booking software. We use HipCamp as a complement now to our website. So definitely worth exploring as a great viable option.
Let's talk briefly over operations. I really would. If I could just take over this webinar and just talk about operations, I really would. Because listen, someone's got to run this business. While he's over there doing marketing and build outs or whatnot, how are you actually going to be able to get this place up and going?
You got to have people to run the operations.
You know what? 10 years ago, you're very true.
Yeah.
But nowadays, there are 3 real keys to successful operations, and that is invisible service, remote customer service, and then technology. With these 3 keys, you will be able to operate a very, very successful and time-saving operation.
We have 3 people that work for us, and we run over $1 million in business in our 2 properties that we have in the same town.
But it took time to get there. And the reason is because once we have really learned, I've made a lot of mistakes. Believe me when I say I've made a lot of mistakes in this journey, but efficiency is a prerequisite to profit. You can be doing $10 million in profit, but if you're spending 10.5 in running the place, what's the point? And so making sure that you're doing things really leanly, is that a word? Yeah. And efficiently. So first thing is, invisible service. And so this is just an example, right? There's nobody that's necessarily on site. We don't have a front desk. We don't have a concierge. How do we counterbalance that? All the information that a guest needs is provided them in advance and thoroughly in advance. We have automated text messages that's sent out to the guest. Hey, just a reminder, check out our guidebook. Oh, are you interested in booking a sauna? Here's a link. And so they're constantly being contacted via email and text message. Then when the day that they arrive, they have a seamless check-in process. Even though that information was sent to them when they first booked, it's sent to them the day of as well. So that, again, that not only eliminates any potential questions they may have, it also makes your customer service a lot leaner. Long gone are these days where you have somebody waiting for you, where you hand over your license, you hand over another credit card, you sign another document, right? All that's such a waste of time for you and the guest. And you're only really able to do that by utilizing technologies and softwares. God, I wish I could go into this. I really do. There's a ton of great software out there. There really is. Some are better fits for certain business models than others. It's one of those things where the best piece of advice that I can give you is just sign up for a demo, right? Google a software that you're looking for. If it's a keyless lock, if it's a guest messaging service, if it's a property managed software, a booking engine, just Google anyone.
What do we use, Joanna? What's our tech stack?
Our booking software and our property management system is called Cloudbeds. Our guest messaging service is Akia. Our remote lock operations is Operto. Our payroll service is Gusto. Our remote clock in and clock out for the employees, because that's really something that you should never, ever have to deal with, is When I Work. Our phone service is GoToConnect. I think that's about it, because if you do it right, you really don't need more than like half a dozen technologies right now. Right. And they all integrate with each other. So biggest piece of advice, hold on, don't cut me off on operations just yet. Hold on. My biggest piece of advice is that if you are going to, when you start to do research, just sign up for like 2 or 3 demos so that you can compare and contrast, because that is the only way that you're going to learn. You need to learn what the industry is doing. You need to learn who is doing what. And by signing up for 2 or 3 demos, that is your best way to be educated in this area. Financials.
Yeah.
Oh, this one's a good one too.
This is a good one, but this will also be brief. And just on the operational side, I mean, Joanna is the best operational hospitality person that, and I know I'm biased because she's my wife, but her level of experience with all of those software, she's like a habitual demoer.
I know
And
it's a problem.
so in Glamp Launch Accelerator, I just want to put a little bug for that. That is where she goes super deep on a lot of that and talks through a lot of.
I do go super deep on all of the softwares and research, but I will say this: coming into previously opening that original boutique hotel that we did, and then moving over to Ferncrest, I had no experience. I just want to be very clear. I knew nothing about the hospitality world. I really wasn't interested in softwares or technology. It's not like something I've always done. So just giving you confidence that you too can as well.
Awesome. So Ferncrest Expenses, or Ferncrest Investments, even if you want to call it. This is what we spent when we initially opened Ferncrest in the first year. We have spent more expanding Ferncrest since then, which I think is a really key point, because starting at one point doesn't mean that that's your finishing point. You are running a profitable business, and that means profits will allow you to reinvest back into the property. So this initial investment in $50,000 in tents, $50,000 in platforms, building renovation, solar setup, we've actually probably not quite doubled the investment since then, but we've taken a lot of our profits from the first year and piled it back in, making what is now a really world-class glamping destination that we're really proud of, that has 21 glamping sites and is really, poised for long-term success. One of the things that I want to call out here, as you think through your expenses and what your investment in it is going to be, is generally speaking, like the lodging units and then the preparation for those sites is going to be about the same. So for us, it was something that I didn't really realize, and I forgot to really budget in tent platforms. I just was like, okay, tents, $50,000. That'll build us the tents, and we'll add electricity and whatnot. Turns out we actually needed another $50,000 just for the platforms. So there's a lot that goes into the planning process that that I just think is important, that you put the work in up front to really understand that. I thought I put the work in, but even that had blind spots. So yeah, I think the other thing that you want to really—
You spent a little more than you were supposed to. Is that the point of this? Is that the point of what you're trying to say?
It is, but it doesn't actually have to be as expensive as you think either. Because think about, like, we needed to put utilities in, and we did solar instead for $16,000. That was just for the first season. We ended up upgrading after that. But there are ways to work around this, because that is the beautiful thing about the glamping industry, is that you're not building a $50 million hotel resort. You're building a Glampground, so the costs can be relatively controlled. The financial metric that you really are working towards as you build your Glampground is how much are you going to make per night? And this is an important metric because it says a lot about what type of business and who you're attracting is. Now, I'll put it this way. If you're getting into glamping, you got to have an ADR above $100. Don't even bother if you're not. And I know everybody's probably thinking this way already, but it's important for you to know that you're not getting into this business for cheap rates. In fact, I would say that your ADR, I would challenge you to think in terms of above 200. If that's a little bit too high, anywhere from 150 plus is a good range for you to think of. And it really depends on a lot of factors. Are you putting bathrooms in the tents? Are you having a communal facility? How big are the units? Are you having kitchens? The list goes on. But you really want to measure ADR and occupancy rate, because those two things together are what are going to ultimately determine how much profit, how much revenue, and how much profit you're going to make. Ferncrest in 2022 was 258. We've actually seen that come down a little bit this year because we've adjusted some of the pricing structures to like 230, 240. But generally speaking, 250 is Ferncrest's ADR right now. This then feeds into what you're ultimately doing for your business, which is creating generational wealth for you and your family through real estate. And what I mean by this is that you can take a piece of land that's worth a few $100,000 and make it worth a few $1 million through the principles of commercial valuation of the property based upon a cap rate. Cap rate is the capitalization rate, which is the rate of return of investment. It's basically the way that a future investor might think of your property if they were to buy it, or a bank if they're going to look to refinance it and give you a chunk of change as a result. Glampground cap rates, they fluctuate based upon the economy, but right now, as a rule of thumb, you could just say 10% is a cap rate. And basically you take your profit and you divide it by the cap rate to get what the valuation is. So for every $100,000 in NOI, net operating income, profit essentially, you're getting $1 million in value. crazy, right? So Ferncrest at give or take $250,000 in profit, you know, at a 10% cap rate could be worth $2.5 million in the market. And we bought it for 285 seller financing and put another, you know, $500,000 into it. So massive multiple already. That's what you can do with commercial real estate through a valuation like that.
3 reasons to launch now. I mean, at least 3 reasons to launch now, right? So
It was hard to get to 3.
It was hard to get to 3. I mean, a really big part of it right now is the supply and the demand. The market demand right now is high. We have seen it, and just, I mean, I don't know if we mentioned this yet, but we, you know, this Ferncrest is open down the road from a campground, from a traditional campground. And we've seen our numbers go up. And so I really, really encourage you not to get concerned about being too late or being oversaturated. The market demand is there. Social media, nowadays, the way that social media is used is providing a really low cost reach for marketing. I think back in the day when we had started United by Blue, we wish we had something like social media, but we didn't. We were buying those billboards and we were doing radio ads. Now, social media really is incredibly powerful. And again, we encourage you to start today, and you can always start small and scale. Last season, we had almost about half of the sites that we had this season. And you know, we were hesitant. It was a lot. And so we started a little bit smaller than we originally wanted to. And now, yeah.
Keep those questions coming into the Q&A. We have 10 minutes left, and we're going to dive deep into those. Joanna's going to head out to get our kiddo from school. Good timing.
I mean, for all the moms and dads out there, you get it.
You get it. You get it. But I'm going to stay, and I'm going to go through all of these questions. So keep on coming into the chat box. We still have a little bit more content to go through, and then we'll get to questions. So launching is all about, like Joanna said, there's a lot of factors. The market demand is there. Social media makes it really easy and low cost. And then also the element that we think is missing, that we've seen is missing through our communication with everybody online over the last year and a half, is the educational aspect. There are plenty of resources out there, free resources, paid resources that help people with real estate investing and things like that. But there's nothing in the organic grassroots way that we built Ferncrest. And that's ultimately what Glamp Launch is all about. Glamp Launch is about applying the principles that we took Ferncrest to market with and allowing you to do the same. And the reason why we created Glamp Launch is not to sell an educational program. It's not. It's actually because we're building a community around glamping and ultimately also franchising our own Glampground concept. That's not what Glamp Launch is about, but it's about that thesis of let's build a community together, get everybody working towards the same objective. There's a plentiful attitude in glamping right now, and the lesson here is more is merry. This is the roadmap: creative financing, building your dream Glampground, setting up technology, marketing magic, operational excellence, and then getting you to launch. And that's essentially what Glamp Launch is going to do for you. It's going to allow you to reach profitability faster. It's going to give you support from those who have been there and done that. And then it's also going to identify opportunities to get open ASAP, not in 2 years, but maybe, you know, next year in 2025. And ultimately, that is why we have it launching today. We're going to send you an email after this with a link. And that you're going to go, basically, just do me a favor, just look through it anyways. Like, even if it's not for you, look through it, shoot me an email, give me feedback on it. You'll see what it's all about. You'll see some testimonials, and ultimately the on-demand availability starts tomorrow afternoon. All of this content is available. 6 modules, 35 classes, you get the drill. There's a lot that goes into that. We put a lot of our heart and soul into launching Glamp Launch so that we can help you launch your Glampground. And ultimately, if you sign up today, by the time it launches tomorrow at 1 p.m., it's discounted heavily at $397, but I tell you guys, it is worth way more than that, because the amount of time and money that it would save you, even if you're remotely interested in starting a Glampground, is significant. And last but not least, for the people that order by tomorrow as well, we're giving a Glampground audit, a Glampground plan audit. So whatever your plan is for your Glampground, you'll get a 30-minute call with me that I will go through everything with you. That alone is worth whatever investment you're putting into this, because I can help you identify your blind spots and maybe point you in the right direction of some things that you're wondering about. So I'd really love to get on the phone with you. I'd love to give you this content, and we'll send you a email with the link probably in like 10, 20 minutes after this call. And it'd be great if you could just check it out, do me a favor, and let me know what you think. Okay, let's dive into some questions. I'm gonna pull this up now. I'm gonna stop sharing so I can see, you can see me a little bit clearer. So stick around so that we can go through these. And I'm going to stay as long as I can. As long as people want to stay, I'll continue to answer questions. So don't think that I'm going to cut you right off at 2 o'clock. If you don't have to go anywhere, I'll be here and I'll be answering questions. And let's start at the top. So on a budget, how do you approach an architect to draw up a site plan and construction plan for my small glamping village in order for the GC to build? All right, this is really actually a big thing. If you want to create a budget plan, like you don't want to go through massive architectural plans, I would start with your Google satellite image of your property and physically sketch. I know this sounds crazy, but trust me, it works. Physically sketch up what you're looking for. All right. And then approach a digital artist online. You can find them on Fiverr or Upwork, and hire them for as low as $50 to actually give you a line plan of what your campground would ideally look like. Sounds simple. Maybe it sounds complicated, but it is simple. And then you can take that. If you need then engineering plans for the actual architect, or you need it for the plan that you're going to submit to your city or give to your GC, then you can take that, and you actually are going to save a ton of time and money working with the higher cost engineer or architect, if you need to go that route, on those plans getting developed into something that they can use. I actually used an engineer. Here's something really cool. I used an engineer for the electrical plan at Ferncrest based upon a line drawing that I did. And they can actually take the measurements from the satellite imagery of Google, and they can do it in their office. They don't even have to do site visits anymore. I think COVID also helped with this. It made people not have to go out to do things like this, but basically working in his office, so it saves a lot of time and money, and creating an engineered plan for electrical work that was submitted to the city or the town that was able to get approved that way. So think outside of the box. You don't have to go all the way to like a really crazy architectural plan, and that costs maybe a couple $1,000s versus $20,000. How do we navigate code? That the next question is about code. That's exactly sort of how we navigate code. Is we look for the least path of resistance. At the end of the day, towns are not in the way. They don't want to mess with your plans as long as you're checking off the boxes and not necessarily trying to do more than what you need to do. And I'd say that the best advice I can give you is look at what the code is and conform your plans as much to it as possible. Again, if the deck height has to be under 30 inches, make it under 30 inches. If your site count has to be under 10 to be, a quick approval, make it under 10, expand in the future. All you have to do is do that. A little bit of due diligence on your part. It doesn't take more than an hour worth of work to call the town, look at the resources online to navigate code in your favor, rather than building your Glampground plan and then trying to go and get it approved. Look at the code and then build your Glampground plan. That's my best advice. Wood stoves. Have you found these dangerous for any visitors' children? I'd say yes and no. Wood stoves are definitely not something that I would recommend for people unless they feel like they really need them. At this point, we've had wood stoves in some of our tents and not in others. I sleep a lot better knowing the ones that don't have wood stoves in them. So I would say that, yes, there is a variable. Have we had an issue? No. Have we had people that don't know how to make fires get smoke into the tent and complain about the smoke? Yes. So I'd say, please be thoughtful about how you include that amenity into your tents. And if you don't feel like it's additive, I wouldn't do it. This goes back to make your life easy. Make things so that you don't have to do more work. And if wood stoves are going to add a lot of work to your plate without having any real big financial return, put an electric heater in instead, and people generally will be happy. So the source for the 12 billion combined industry number is Sage Outdoors, I believe, is where I found it. Sage Outdoors is an outdoor consultancy. I believe that's where it was, but I can look into that. Do you think it's feasible and profitable in an expensive area like Southern California? So Southern California is a little bit challenging from a code and compliance standpoint, but from an actual demand and cost standpoint, it's not. And before you say, yeah, California is so expensive, let's think about this outside of the box. You're not looking to build, or if you're looking to do it affordably, you're not looking to build near city limits. You're not looking to build near national parks. You really need to identify those areas of California or anywhere that is far enough outside of an area of population where it is a destination, but far enough outside where it's really cheap. And believe it or not, I've looked, California has inexpensive land in certain markets. 3 hours is the radius that people are willing to drive to go to a destination, especially a weekend destination. They almost want to drive, right? They want to get out of town. They don't want it to be 30 minutes away. They want it to be 2 hours away or 3 hours away. So look at that radius. Plot your point on where you want to be near the population that you want to attract, and then draw a radius of 3 hours and look all within that area. Look for state parks, not national parks. That's a great hint as well. Great trick, because state parks are numerous and they tend to be beautiful, and they tend to have hiking, and they tend to have all those amenities that people want. I would very much encourage you guys to build your Glampground around state parks, not national parks, unless you have millions of dollars budget. How many hours, weeks did you put into starting the business pre and post launch? Great question. Pre-launch, opening Ferncrest in the weeks leading up, the months leading up, it was very much a full-time focus on Ferncrest, right? I'd say, and I was doing other things at the same time. So maybe like 30 to 40 hours a week. So not crazy, right? And I'm doing other things as well. I'm working probably 70 to 80 hours collectively, but the Ferncrest focus was probably a lot, more like a full-time job. Now Ferncrest is probably like 1 or 2 hours for me a week. And probably about maybe 4 to 5 hours for Joanna. And we have other business going on outside of the actual property. I'm just saying the property itself. But if you build a Glampground like we're describing, you can actually create something that is not a huge drain on your time. So that is a huge, huge thing about the technology and about the profitability that a glamping business does for you. It allows you to set something up that can employ other people, 2-3 people, and run without your full-time involvement. Do these prices include a bathhouse with showers and restrooms? Generally speaking, yes. I'd say we did a lot of renovate. We bought our bath. So this was a question about the pricing in that original slide. We bought a campground with existing bathhouses, but they needed a full facelift, and they also needed new septic tanks. So more or less, it was the cost of actually building them from scratch. But maybe if you wanted to budget a bathhouse and a septic tank, you can build a bathhouse, a really amazing bathhouse, for $50,000, and you can get a full septic system designed and installed for a campground for $20,000 to $30,000. So generally speaking, a bathhouse facility with new septic is one of your biggest expenses, and that should be anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000. And then, any suggestions on how to find a campground for sale? Sure. So there's a few things. One is you can literally look online, look through, there's a website, campgrounds for sale, look up campgroundforsale.net or something like that. I forget what the exact one is. That's an interesting one, but those tend to be a little bit more pricey. The other way is LoopNet, LoopNet.net, or no, loopnet.com, I believe it is. And that is where you can find a ton of commercial properties, hospitality properties, land, all commercial. And then also, I would say that do your research and just look for campgrounds in your area and identify ones that you might want to try to reach out to and buy, like we did. Ours was not for sale. Do you have a regular user group or mastermind? We don't have a mastermind, but one of the things about Glamp Launch Accelerator that I'm really excited about is there is going to be weekly Q&A calls with me, literally weekly calls every Thursday. That is going to be a slightly extra cost, and you'll see that in the process of once you buy the Accelerator, you'll have that as an add-on. But literally weekly calls where we can go through things like this, not just actually through Q&A like this on the Q&A box, but we'll actually do face-to-face videos with a group. And oh, that's a great idea about the competitor to LoopNet. But basically, we will have a very, very strong focus on helping people, guide them through the process of starting a campground that are a part of the Glam Launch Accelerator program. And then lessons on scoping your projects. I'm not sure what that means. How much have you spent on repairs and replacement, both time and money? I would say that we have not had to replace anything that we built in the first year, or any major structures that we've had to replace in the first year. We've had to replace maybe linens and things like that. The operational cost of running a campground, running any hospitality business is going to be heavily predicated on cleaning. So cleaning linens, damaged furniture, if that happens, it's very rare. Lanterns, things like that we've had, break on us, that had to, operating cost maybe of a few $1,000s a month for a business that generates, over $50,000 a month is not too bad. Any insights on the seasonality of glamping? I'm worried the winter months will be slow. Yes, they will be slower. And I have to say, our main location in Promised Land, Pennsylvania does close in the wintertime. That's because our bathrooms are not insulated, and we have designed a new septic, and we have a new bathroom facility that will be going on that will allow us to keep some of our dome tents open year round, because dome tents are insulated and can be heated and stay open year round. And there is interest and demand with glamping year round. If you ever look online, you see dome tents covered in snow. They look really beautiful. People love them. But the demand is going to be less, right? Your prime glamping season is going to be Memorial Day, not through Labor Day. It actually goes through October. You're going to have less weekday stays after Labor Day. You're going to have a lot of weekday stays during school, when school's out. But then through October is a really good camping season for most sections of the US, especially anything that is temperate, where you have leaves changing colors, you have cooler weather. People love that. So we have weekends booked through October, and make really good money in October, actually. It's our second biggest month after July. Do you rent your dome tents more than the safari tents? What is the price difference? Yes, dome tents are a massive home run for us. And that's why our franchise model of Ferncrest, as we grow it, is really predicated and built off of the dome tent model. Dome tents have this like hotel-esque feel, and also they don't feel very like crunchy, like granola-y, right? Like what I mean by that is like they have a very metropolitan feel that appeals to the urban person coming out of the city, coming out of like a Brooklyn, but they also appeal to the suburban mom who wants a really nice environment that's air conditioned and has a mini fridge and beautiful windows and things like that. Versus safari tents feel like a little bit more traditional camping still. And they have just a little bit more of a difficult upkeep as well. We've noticed that this year, especially because they're not temperature regulated, we have a lot more things like mildew and growth on the safari tents versus the dome tents are a PVC exterior shell, which is very easy to clean. And then the interior being somewhat temperature controlled and regulated, just stay a lot nicer. So let's see, what do you use for security and backup for if technology fails, power outages, etc.? So we believe that this is a controversial opinion, but we believe that people are innately good. And therefore, we try not to babysit as much as you might think that you need to. And this is really important for you as you think about your operations and your planning of your Glampground. We don't have somebody there 24/7. So we expect people to be responsible, after quiet hours of 9 o'clock. We use extensive technology to remind people, text messages. We have monitoring. We have cameras, that monitor the common areas. So we can definitely identify and call out things. We have a self-service checkout store. So we have a fully self-service checkout store that allows people to ring up by credit card only, no cash. So we have things that keep people honest, but we also expect people to be adults and be responsible people. Keep in mind, people that are there, they're paying $200 to $300, $150 to $300 to stay there a night. And therefore there is a level of expectation that, you know, people are going to be responsible. That being said, it's not always the case. People damage things sometimes and we have to charge them. And that's just the nature of hospitality. But it's not nearly as bad as you think it would be when I tell people that we don't have like a 24/7 caretaker that's walking around babysitting people. All right. You listed first year expenses. How many sites are represented with those expenses? The very first year, we only had 6 dome tents. We had 9 crest tents, which are the safari tents, and then we had a handful of bell tents. We nixed the bell tents because they were not performing. Low end doesn't perform in glamping. This is a big realization that I should have said earlier, but higher end is better. Dome tents book at a much better occupancy than even the crest tents, the safari tent style that we have. Even though the price difference is like, you know, $250 for a dome tent, and it might be $150. There's like, generally speaking, $100 difference between safari and dome, but the actual occupancy of dome tent and therefore the profitability is much higher. You know, you're talking about fully booked on the weekends versus not always fully booked on the weekends for the safari tents. So that's just one thing that you should consider as you're thinking about your glamping journey, is that cheaper is not better. And that doesn't mean that you're going to not attract people if you price a little bit higher up. Are you willing to either consult or join us on our project? We're well underway. We have maintenance building well, etc. Shoot me a message. Again, anybody that is deeper into this process that Glam Launch Accelerator is not a good fit for, shoot me a message, Brian at lintonhospitality.com, and tell me about your situation. Let me know how I can help. I can't promise I can because I have a lot of commitments, but if there's an alignment that we can make work, you know, we can definitely look at it. But I would say that at the very least, get Glam Launch Accelerator if you're interested in this, because the price does go up tomorrow. It's $397 right now. It's going to go up and it's never going to come back down to this price. So either way, you'll get at least some education, even if I can't be a part of your project. Are you going to the glamping convention in Denver, October 1st? I fly out on Sunday. So if you're going to be there, I was actually thinking about this. Maybe there's still over 125 people on this call. So I was just thinking about this last night. If anybody on this call is going to be there, shoot me a message. I was thinking about maybe doing a meetup. Maybe we like rent out a restaurant. We have like a dinner one night where we have an informal gathering of everybody that's interested in this space. And we all just sort of like, again, start building community around this model of glamping, which is, you know, lean, mean, and profitable. And, you know, not trying to build something for $5 million, but for $500,000 that can change your life and create really life-changing income. So, yeah, glamping show is in Denver. So people that are asking you, it's in outside of Denver, outside of Boulder, Aurora, I think it is. And it's next week. So I fly out Sunday and I'll see some of you guys there. How do you keep the tents outside clean, as in the sides, tops when under trees? So dome tents in particular are really great because they're circular and they tend to not really have a lot of stuff sit on top of them, specifically branches and leaves. They sort of go off, right? That being said, they do get a little bit of growth over, like, you know, they can get like mossy or whatever. And that I use this stuff called 30-second mildew remover. It's like a cleaning solution that you plug into the hose and then you just spray it on top and then you just wipe it off. You spray it off and it like the tents shine after that. They turn bright white again. At least ours are white. So the other ones though, the crest tents, the safari tents, that's a different material. That's not a PVC. That's a little bit harder to clean. And they also have more nooks and crannies where branches and leaves. So we actually physically have to get up on a ladder, clean those off the roofs every month or so, you know, go up with a broom or something like that, and then spray that solution on and then scrub a little bit more. It's a little bit more hard to upkeep. So definitely keep in mind that the material of your tent matters so much. PVC domes are great because PVC is a very industrial cleanable material. Anything canvas or porous, anything that's going to hold moisture or be porous will be more likely to grow stuff and look really bad in a warmer, wetter summer climate. What are the typical demographics of people staying at Glampground? Great question. It's expanding all the time. At first you would think that being 2.5, 3 hours outside of New York City and Philadelphia, we would be really like the Brooklynite, the cool kid type of thing, but it's actually not. That's a part of it, the younger demographic, the millennial, urban dwelling person. But then you have a lot of young families that have moved to the suburbs. They have, like me, I have 3 kids, young families that want to come out. They don't want to haul all the equipment that they might have used to camp with, like myself. If I'm going to go out with my kids now, I love traditional camping, by the way. That's why I got into this space, is I love camping. But if I'm going to go out with all my kids now, man, the last thing I want to do is bring all that equipment, pitch the tent, knowing that they're not going to help me that much and everything like that. So glamping is so appealing to a demographic like us, which is like, suburban now. We love the outdoors. We have young kids. That's a great demographic. So if you're in any population center where there's that millennial younger demographic that is in concentration, that's who you're going to target. That's going to be very, very, very good. The other thing is older populations, boomers and beyond, that maybe traditionally camped, but now they just want, they have the money, they have their 401k, they have all the assets to basically fund and pay for something like this. So, and then I would say that it does tend to generally lean Caucasian. It is more of a like Caucasian demographic that we see. However, from a minority standpoint, we do see a very strong interest with African American population, because there is this notion that like the minority population hasn't really had a chance to camp growing up, and therefore having the opportunity to go and get into camping through glamping has been really appealing for us in that way. So, and then Hispanic population as well is very into the outdoors and camping. So we see large groups of our Hispanic populations in the area coming out, usually as groups of families, renting up multiple tents and camping at Ferncrest as a result. All right, so I have a friend who owns a campground in northern Minnesota. His opinion is to stay away from huts, yurts, tents, and other trendy accommodations. Yeah, I think huts, yurts, tents. Well, I think yurts tend to lean a little bit more like specific towards like that, like, I don't want to say hippie. That's not a very nice way of describing, but it is more like that it's not a metropolitan and like sophisticated like feel. It definitely has a more vibe. Whereas like the dome tents, the reason why I don't think those are trendy, the geodesic dome is an architectural feature that's been around for 50, 60, 70 years. And you see that in cities, you see it in tents, you see it in different architectural elements. So I think the trend aspect of domes for me has been actually very reassuring, that will be a longevity, both in terms of quality, because our tents are going to last for 10, 20 years, but also in terms of trend, they're not as going to be as trendy as some things like that. So did you get your dome tents? Where do we get our dome tents from? So we got our dome tents. We actually, when we started the project, we customized our dome tents to the specs that we wanted. And then we produced them directly with a tent manufacturer overseas. So we have a direct to manufacturer relationship where we're importing now tents every few months in large container loads, and we're helping set up our campgrounds, our franchises, and our clients' campgrounds. And we're doing that all through our own supply chain. We also designed our own hot tub based upon the fails of the hot tubs that we bought from a local company. And so everything we actually have is our own branded stuff, and it is a part of what we are building our business on as well. This whole notion of helping others build their campgrounds also is a part of the equipment side of things. We are currently not selling it. We only sell it in certain cycles. So we're going to start our next sales cycle of equipment, saunas, hot tubs, dome tents, as well as the consulting packages, probably later in October, so that people that want to get involved can start to get something ready for 2025. So if you're interested in that, we can always talk, but that's something that's in the works. Laundry, somebody's asking about laundry. So we were going to build a laundry facility, but we ran the math, we ran the labor aspect, and we decided to outsource it. So even though we're in a smaller rural town, the local laundromat has a person that comes and picks up everything, does the laundry, and then brings it back. I would definitely explore that as an option, because the less you can do on your campground itself, the better it is going to be for you. So definitely consider a service if you can. If not, you can put in machines and you can manage it yourself. We do that at our hotel up the road. We just decided with the size of Ferncrest being at 21 sites, it's a lot of work to do laundry. So try to outsource it if you can. Do you have a manager at Ferncrest or someone who is on the property and paid? Yes, we do. We have, like I said, we have 3 employees right now that manage Ferncrest, but they also manage the hotel up the road. So we actually have both of those properties managed by 3 people. Can you believe that? 3 people run the entirety of those properties. And it's not like it's a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to sugarcoat it, but the reason why it works is all the technology behind it and the way that it's set up and the way that we've been thoughtful about customer service and how we've integrated all of that into it. I see your franchising. Can you touch base on that? So the franchise, I would recommend checking out ferncrestfranchise.com. So ferncrestfranchise.com is our franchising website. If you're interested in starting a Glampground with us and having it be a Ferncrest, you can fill out the form there. That website also has all the information about the costs, the royalties, things like that. So go check that out. Can you tell me how many tents you can put on a septic system and shared well? This really depends. Septic systems are all different sizes, and the amount of load that you have to have is also dependent upon your septic code. So basically, I know from experience that I want to say a 2,000 gallon septic can do like 10. For us, it was like 10 tents. So we have 2 different bathhouses, and then we have a 3rd bathhouse that's going to go in. That's going to allow us to have more indoor showers. Right now, we only have outdoor showers, and we want to add indoor shower facilities. So that is going to be a lot more water usage than obviously just toilets. I can't answer that question exactly, other than say that it's way better to upsize your septic than to downsize it, because if you ever want to add stuff in the future, you want to have a septic that can handle it. Is Glamp Launch and weekly calls provided as support if you become a part of the franchise? Really great question. And I haven't actually thought about that, but I would say, yeah, like 100%. I mean, the franchise is like the ultimate partner that we're really like, the business for us is all about building up this community and ultimately opening up more Ferncrest locations that other people independently own and operate, not us, right? The benefit largely is to them. We get a small royalty from the franchise model, but we want to basically grow our business through that model. So I would say that, yeah, without a doubt, franchises are basically the main, like they're going to get everything that we have. Like they're basically our partners. So yeah, definitely. If you buy a commercial land, can you live on the property? Yeah, you can definitely live on commercial land. I mean, hotels, I mean, people live above restaurants. Like generally speaking, there's no restrictions. Again, everything's different. Towns are different, but it shouldn't be a problem. What's the average cost of a dome tent? The dome tent, like I said earlier, any tent or any structure for that matter, about half of the cost is going to be the actual structure, and then half of the cost is going to be the preparation and everything else that the land needs for it. So a dome tent, like the base cost of a dome tent, a 16-foot dome tent like we have at Ferncrest, can be as low as $6,000. And then adding insulation, adding like the flooring, adding everything else, furniture, platforms, right? Everything else that you have to build is probably going to make it around like a $6,000 dome tent could end up being fully ready for guests, be around $15,000 to be ready for guests. A bigger dome tent, 20-foot dome tent, 23-foot dome tent that we also sell, probably going to be near to like $20,000 to get it ready for customers. But that's a tent that, a 16-foot dome tent, you're going to get $250 a night, $250 a night for, at least based upon our model. And then the bigger one, maybe $300. So it really pays back really quickly if you think about it. Yeah. Are you set up as an S Corp paying sales as employees? And if so, was your original salaries versus now? So, okay. So I'll just share everything because mine as well. So we are set up as an LLC. We have a management company as an LLC. The properties themselves are owned by separate LLCs. So all of our properties are owned by like individual holding companies that just own the property and don't run the property. And that's very important because you want to separate the liability. The property itself can never be associated with the actual employees or running of the property. So God forbid you have an employee that does something nefarious, right? Bad. You get sued. The management company is getting sued, but the management company doesn't own the asset of the property. So the management company is essentially paying rent to the ownership of the company or the ownership of the property. And the management company doesn't hold much cash in the bank account or anything like that. You know, you have $5, $6, $7, $10,000 in the bank account, and that's just running the company. So the question that you had was, you know, what was our original salaries versus now? So we're not, so because it's an LLC, that's a flow through entity that basically the profits belong to us. Last year, our management company made $400,000 in profit. So our salary last year was $400,000, which sounds crazy to say, but it's the reality of the hospitality industry if you do it right. And so, and this year we hope to be somewhere around the same, maybe $400,000 to $500,000 in profit from the management company, Linden Hospitality, that basically runs our properties and runs, you know, runs the relationships with all the customers and things like that. So, yeah, so LLCs are a good function. You wouldn't pay yourself because it's a flow through entity. You just be receiving the profits. If you want to start very small and grow, what is the smallest you would suggest? So the smallest I would suggest is 3. I think 1 is too small because it doesn't really give you enough data. 2 is getting there. You start to get like good data. But then 3 is like, okay, you have enough where it's like, it's enough of a business now where the inputs are going to be worth the output, because your inputs for 1 are going to be very similar to 3, other than the cost of actually building it. But the brand, the marketing, the website, all of that's going to be the same, but you're only going to have 1 night every day that you can ever sell. But if you can sell 3 nights for, say, $200, that's $600 a night versus $200. It makes a big difference. I think you got to do, you know, upwards of 3 for it to feel like a meaningful investment. But you can do 1 and you could grow from there. I don't want to discourage that either. Will the Q&A be available for replay as well? Sure. I think I'll include all this in there. Do you have any dome tents that have 2 beds? We do. We have a 16-foot dome tent that has 2 full beds, and then we have at our Flint Creek, Oklahoma franchise location, we have a king bed with 2 bunk beds, so that's sleep 6, and that's a great way to do it too. Wow, we still have over 100 people on this call, and I'm going over 30 minutes now. If we want to start very small in the beginning and grow, what would be the small? Oh, yeah, I just did that one. I'm sorry. How many franchises do you currently have in the works? We have 2 others in development, and we have the one that just opened. All right. I know the chat box has a ton as well, so I'm going to open up that. If anybody has any new chats, just throw them in there. What's the wind rating on the dome tents? It goes up to like 100 miles per hour. Like, again, if you're in Florida and you have like a hurricane coming in, like right now, you know, most structures have issues and might be in danger. The good thing about a dome tent is that if you had a situation like this where you have like an impending natural disaster, you could actually take the actual canopy off without a crazy amount of work, and the steel structure that would just have wind blowing through it, because it would just be like, you know, blowing through the steel. There's not enough things to catch on it. And the reason why dome tents have a high wind rating is the wind rolls over it because it's round. Let's see. Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to get to these questions. What brand of dome tents? I already covered that. When you say dome, is it geodesic dome? Yes, it's a geodesic dome tent. Don't fear the hippie. Amen. I agree. I have plenty of hippie in me at times. I may be in Denver. Okay, great. Again, if you've been tuning in and out, we're in the Q&A, and a few things have come out of this Q&A. One is, I'm going to be in Denver next week for the glamping show. If anybody's going to be around, let's meet up. Secondly, Glam Launch Accelerator. For the next 24 hours, it's the discounted pricing. If you want to get a part of that, please join. It'd be great to have you. And then, and I got to make sure that I send out the email with the playback and the link to join Glam Launch Accelerator, because I don't think anybody has that. And then let me see. Sorry, there's so many questions here. It's hard to keep track of them. How much is the difference of the tent versus dome tent investment and their ROI? Again, I would say that the dome tent investment, you know, you're looking at somewhere in the magnitude of $10,000 to $20,000 versus maybe $5,000 to $10,000 for like a safari tent. But your actual ROI is going to be 30 to 40% greater with a dome tent than it is with, say, like a safari tent, based upon what we've experienced. I'm in Houston, and the summer is near dead because we're about 105 to 115 in temps. Yeah, probably the case. And I would say that summer is probably not your peak season in a market where it's super hot. You might see fall and spring and even winter be a bigger season for you as a result. Can you talk more about the accelerator, Ira? Yeah, I will. I'll go over that more. So a couple people just asked about that. So basically, Glam Launch Accelerator is all on-demand courses that me and Joanna have personally taught from our years of experience in this space now. Again, not only because of our experience in building a successful Glampground, but because we built other hospitality projects, as well as built a $20 million clothing company, which taught us a ton as well. So the accelerator, though, is focused on building a Glampground. It's focused on building a profitable, successful Glampground in a way that doesn't require you to come into a project with millions of dollars to invest, right? Like, it could be somebody that has the desire to start with something small, like even a $10,000 or $20,000 Glampground, to, you know, what we did, which was hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it's the lessons that we've learned applied in 6 different sections. The first section is foundation. So it's like the foundation of the glamping industry and what you should know. It's finance. And then it is, let me actually pull up my document here to make sure I'm actually saying it correctly. We also have then it goes into building your Glampground. So like the branding, how to build the brand, the aesthetic design, how to plan for utilities, how to find construction partners, the technology side, basically the direct booking website, the property management system. Joanna goes through all the different options and how you should think about choosing property management software, helping you set up a self-service technology so that you can do self-checkout at a camp store and everything in between that. And then marketing, my favorite topic, diving into like what we did and how we did it, and then how you can do it too, even if you're not going to do it at the same level. Marketing is such a core element that I love and I love to teach on. And then running your Glampground, the technology, or not the technology, the operational side, the housekeeping, the guest experience, the common spaces, managing poor reviews, boosting revenue, merchandise, guidebooks, things like that. And then it's going to also provide a lot of resources beyond that. So we're creating like action plans for each of those sections, where we can basically help you organize your thoughts and take you through the process of actually starting the Glampground as well. So it is very much educational focused, but the great thing about the accelerator is that it lasts for lifetime. So even if you're at a 1 right now and you're just starting to think about it, maybe you grab the accelerator. It's a good investment. It's like a few nights out, right? If you put the money towards the accelerator, you're going to have it forever. You'll get all the updates. We're going to be adding stuff. I'm going to be adding stuff for the next week because I'm still pumping stuff in there. And you'll have it forever. You also have the ability to join at any point the weekly calls. Again, that's a small extra cost that you'll see in the checkout process. But essentially, those weekly calls are direct Q&A calls. Imagine, you know, maybe it could be as small as a few people that are in those calls at any given week, because, you know, maybe you don't have questions, so you're not a part of them. You get replays of those calls. So even if you can't make it, you'll be able to see through what other people are asking. You'll be able to you can have your wife join the call. You can have other people. That's not the core element of the Glam Launch Accelerator, but that's like the Glam Launch Accelerator on fire. And that allows you to really be a part of a community like we're trying to create over an ongoing basis. Oh, I got to get some water. This is a lot. Yeah, no worries, Ira. So I'll send out the link to that, and we will make sure that everybody that wants to join the accelerator in the next 24 hours before the price goes up has a chance to do so. We just dipped below 100 people for the first time. That means that I'm probably going to wrap up soon. If you have any other questions, put them in right now, because I will make sure that anybody that has real pressing questions. Somebody just said, how do your management company pay rent to the property ownership company, by percentage or fixed amount? How much is reasonable number of rent among revenue? That's a great question. You could set it up as a percent, no problem. I pay $5,000. I just throw $5,000 into the management, from the management company to the property ownership account every month. And that covers things like anything that the property ownership company should be covering: real estate tax, debt payments. So the mortgage, right? The seller finance mortgage, is a part of that management company. So all of that happens in the management company, and the way that it has money to pay those expenses is the rent that I'm paying from the management company. So the ownership company gets money from the management company through that. But you could say like 10%. There's really no rule there from an IRS standpoint. We have a campground planning 80% RV, cabin, and 20% Glampground. Is your accelerator course good for that as well? It is. Definitely, I would recommend the accelerator for that, because a lot of campgrounds are coming to me and asking for help with, how they could add glamping to their business. And the Glampground sort of complementary concept to an RV park makes a lot of sense, and something that I think would help you greatly. So what's the link for the accelerator? You know what are people still on this? Yeah, 84 people are on this call. I should have just done this. I should send out the link. I'm going to send out the link in the chat. Everybody sit put. Let me grab the link. If you're still on the call, it's probably because you're really into starting in Glampground. So if you want to check this out, it would mean the world to me if you signed up. I know, it's a financial commitment, but I personally think that you guys would get a lot out of it, especially if you're an hour and a half into a webinar like this. Go ahead. The link just basically takes you through like an overview of what it is. It's obviously not going to give you the whole program there, but it's going to give you the ability to assess it on your end and decide whether or not you want to join. So don't see the link. Oh, wait. Yes, it didn't send it to everyone. Hold on, I got to send it. Okay, here it is. Here it is. There it is. There it is. Can you see it now? Let me know if you can see it. Hit enter. Lena, yeah. I actually had a setting where it said, you still don't see it? Oh, wait, thumbs up now, right? Good. So check it out. And, the thing about the accelerator, I'll be completely honest with you guys, is I want the accelerator to be sort of a living course. And we did something called Glamp Launch Live a year ago. We did a couple programs of Glamp Launch Live. And here, I'm going to send it again, Annie. And Glamp Launch Live was the precursor to Glamp Launch Accelerator. And what Glamp Launch Live was $5,000. And it was direct coaching, one-on-one coaching or group coaching with me and Joanna. And that group coaching was very great. And I met so many amazing people and ended up helping people build some Glampgrounds, some really cool Glampgrounds. But what I realized was it was just way too much of a time commitment for me to take on all of those people and do it to the best of my ability. So I've boiled it down into the accelerator, which is basically very similar in terms of what the live program is without the live element. And what I want it to be, and I'm telling you this because the live program was $5,000. This is like right now it's $397. And then B, we really want it to be living, and we're not just creating this program out of the blue, right? We were doing the live component. Glamp Launch as a name has been around for a year plus, and now it's the accelerator. And the weekly Q&A calls are really exciting as an add-on, because that allows us to have a standing time every single week, where I can get on a Zoom call, not just with the chat, right? Live, see your face, talk to you face to face with a group. Could be small, could be 10, could be 5, people, and allow us to basically have a conversation and commit that time to help other people do it without breaking our backs as we try to do everything else that we're trying to do in life and business. So yeah, your business partner can watch it later today. I'm going to send out a link with the replay, as well as the link to this accelerator program. We didn't have investors. We did it as with seller financing, and we also did it with credit cards and cash flow financing. And we had less than, it was like $20,000 in the bank probably at the time when we actually bought the campground. And then we used cash flow from the other businesses, the little hotel up the road, and then money that was coming in from the pre-bookings of the actual campground. It was just like, it's a dance. Anybody that's an entrepreneur, I think what I'm talking about. It's the cash flow dance. It's the It's 1 step forward, 2 steps back, 5 steps forward, 2 steps back, and you just keep on dancing around and you make it through. When are those weekly calls? They're going to be on Thursdays. Thursdays at like, I'm going to have to look at it. Thursdays at 2 p.m. maybe Eastern time. Try to choose a time, 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. Eastern time. That's how you started your coffee shop. Yeah. Anybody that knows, they know. And then somebody asked if we sold the apparel company. We did. We sold it a couple of years ago. Wasn't a glorious sale. That's why we didn't have a ton of money to put into Glampground. We had to sort of do it through scrappy means, but we sold it. It is still around. It's called United by Blue. It's great, great, great clothing company. I'm really proud of it. It grew to $20 million in sales, had 100 employees at one point. We learned a ton. So do you think you will continue to want franchises a year or two from now? Yeah, definitely. I think franchise is going to be the future of our business model. We're definitely really interested in the franchise model because it allows us to do what we do best, which allows us to coach people. It allows us to be a part of people's success, but only make the small royalty off of it. You own 100% of it as a franchise owner. So everything about the franchise is amazing because we want to see people own their own businesses, benefit from their own businesses, build generational wealth. And then we want to be a part of that success in a small way. And that's what a franchise model is. So will the Q&A be available on the replay? Yeah, I'll add this. It's all recording right now. So as soon as I stop recording, I'll package it up and make sure that it gets out in that email in the next like 20, 30 minutes, which I should probably stop because I should do that. So any last questions? I just love this so much. What percent of royalty do you ask? So the franchise model is a 7% royalty. And then 3% goes to marketing. So an additional 3% goes to like a national marketing fund. And so it costs you about 10%, which is like actually smaller than the cost associated with building a brand and doing it on your own. So that's the real premise is we want franchisees that are going to see it as a value add, not a cost. Thank you. You make me feel like I can do this. You can, Jessica. You can. I believe in you. And check out Ferncrest Franchise. I need water. Check out ferncrestfranchise.com for the franchise. Check out the yes, franchises would have the Ferncrest brand. Check out the link here for, again, I'll just throw it in here again. Check out this link to buy the course. Would super appreciate it if you did. And then what else? Let's meet up in Denver if you're going to be there. And hopefully I'll see you guys on some of those Q&A calls, weekly Q&A calls that I'm going to start as soon as this week. It's going to be exciting. I'm really looking forward to it. I want to see you guys be successful. Thank you for joining today. Shoot me an email, brian@lintonhospitality.com. And I want to be your cheerleader and your partner and want to see you succeed. So let me know if there's anything I can ever do for you. I'm here. And even if it takes me a while to get back to you sometimes, because we do have a lot of social media followers and a lot of inbound, but you guys are the special group, the 65 of you that are still here, hour and 40 into the webinar. Appreciate you. I appreciate everybody. Have a good one. See you later, guys.